From a $2.5 million freeway built from scratch to a stunt double surviving a head-on collision at 70 miles per hour, the Ducati 996's journey through the Matrix Reloaded is filled with shocking behind-the-scenes secrets that even die-hard fans have never heard. Between motorcycles that defied their design limits, mysterious production numbers, and costumes with zero protection, this iconic green superbike has a story far stranger than anything shown on screen. Here are 15 weird facts you didn't know about the Matrix Reloaded's Ducati 996. Fact 1. The bike was wrong model year. When Trinity raced through traffic on that iconic dark green Ducati in the Matrix Reloaded, she was riding a 2001 Ducati 996, a sleek Italian superbike that perfectly captured the film's futuristic aesthetic. The movie was such a massive hit when it premiered in 2003 that Ducati saw an incredible marketing opportunity and decided to release a limited edition commemorative bike to cash in on the franchise's popularity. But here's where things get weird. By the time Ducati was ready to produce these special Matrix Edition motorcycles in 2004, they had a significant problem on their hands. The 996 had already been discontinued from production. Ducati had moved on to manufacturing its successor, the 998, which was essentially an upgraded version of the 996 with a more powerful engine and refined engineering. So instead of recreating the exact bike that appeared on screen, Ducati made the practical business decision to produce Matrix Edition 998s instead. If this meant that fans who wanted to own a piece of Matrix history were actually buying a different model than what they saw Trinity riding in the movie. The limited edition 998 kept the most important visual element that made the movie bike so distinctive: that deep, glossy green paint job that matched the Matrix's signature color palette. Ducati also added special Matrix Reloaded decals and graphics to the fairings, along with each bike's individual production number stamped on the tank. Mechanically, the 998 was actually superior to the 996, featuring a Testa Stretta engine that produced 123 horsepower compared to the 996's 112 horsepower. But despite being a better performing machine, it still wasn't the actual bike from the film, making this one of Hollywood's strangest cases of commemorative merchandise that celebrates a movie by selling fans something technically different from what appeared on screen. Fact 2. Nobody knows how many were made. When Ducati decided to cash in on the popularity of the Matrix Reloaded by releasing a special commemorative motorcycle, in 2004, they created one of the most confusing limited edition runs in the company's history. The exact number of Matrix Edition 998 bikes that were actually produced remains a complete mystery to this day, with no official records from Ducati confirming the total production figures. Different sources tell wildly different stories about how many of these dark green superbikes were manufactured. Some Ducati enthusiasts claim that only 93 bikes were built, even citing motorcycle news outlet MCN as their source. Meanwhile, various Ducati forums frequently mention numbers like 120 or 150 units as the worldwide total, with some forum members saying they received this information directly from Ducati through email inquiries. Adding to the confusion, the previous owner of bike number 1 apparently told people that 500 Matrix Edition bikes were produced, though this higher number seems unlikely given what most collectors believe. The uncertainty gets even more complicated when you try to figure out how many bikes were sold in different countries. According to one owner who contacted Ducati directly, approximately 300 bikes were made globally, with about 120 of those being brought to the United States. But this information contradicts the lower production numbers cited by other sources, leaving collectors and enthusiasts scratching their heads about which figures are accurate. What makes this situation particularly strange is that Ducati usually keeps very clear records of their limited edition motorcycles, especially for special collaborations with major Hollywood films. The company typically numbers each bike individually and maintains documentation of production runs, but the Matrix Edition 998 seems to be an exception to this rule. Whether this was an oversight, a deliberate decision to keep the numbers vague for marketing purposes, or simply lost paperwork, nobody really knows. The mystery surrounding these production numbers has only added to the bike's collectible status, and with owners unable to confirm exactly how rare their motorcycles truly are. Fact 3. Hollywood built its first ever freeway. When the Wachowskis needed a freeway for the iconic chase scene in The Matrix Reloaded, they quickly realized that no city in America would let them shut down a major highway for weeks at a time. So instead of trying to work around traffic or rely heavily on green screens, they made a decision that sounds absolutely insane by today's standards. They built an entire freeway from scratch. The production spent $2.5 million constructing a 1.25-mile stretch of realistic highway at the decommissioned Naval Air Station Alameda in California, and it became the first freeway ever built by a Hollywood studio. The fake freeway wasn't just a flat stretch of road either. The construction crew built it as a complete loop on the old naval base runways, with 3 lanes going in each direction, just like a real Los Angeles freeway. To make it look authentic, they added 19-foot-tall sound walls on both sides, though these were made from plywood and concrete to keep costs somewhat manageable. The walls served a dual purpose. They blocked out views of San Francisco in the background and created that claustrophobic highway feel that makes the chase scene so intense. Building this freeway reportedly cost $300,000 per quarter mile, and the construction crew apparently thought the whole project was completely mad. Some workers nearly revolted because the ambition of building an entire highway just for a movie seemed so excessive. But the Wachowskis insisted on it because they needed total control over the filming environment and the secrecy to keep plot details from leaking. The purpose-built set meant they could film exactly what they wanted without worrying about real traffic, permits, or bystanders with cameras. After 7 weeks of intensive filming, the entire freeway was demolished and torn down. However, if you look at aerial photography of the former Naval Air Station Alameda today, you can still see traces of where the Matrix freeway loop once existed on the old runways, a permanent ghost of Hollywood's most ambitious road construction project. Fact 4. The stunt woman crashed head-on and returned. Next day, one of the most dangerous moments during the filming of The Matrix Reloaded happened when stunt double Debbie Evans collided head-on with a car while riding the Ducati 996 at high speed, and somehow she walked away without breaking a single bone. The accident occurred during the wrong-way traffic sequence, where Trinity rides against oncoming cars on the freeway, weaving between vehicles as they rush toward her. During one of the takes, a driver in one of the oncoming cars was supposed to make a lane change at a specific moment, but they missed their cue and stayed in the lane where Evans was riding. With no time to react, Evans hit the car head-on while traveling at approximately 50 miles per hour, and the car was moving toward her at around 20 miles per hour, creating a combined impact speed of roughly 70 miles per hour. In an interview with RevZilla, Evans described the collision as a glancing blow, with the motorcycle traveling down the side of the car, rather than a direct straight-on impact. Despite the terrifying nature of the crash and the incredible speed involved, both Evans and her passenger on the back of the bike somehow avoided any broken bones, though Evans did injure her foot and leg. The car itself received a huge crease in the front fender from the impact, and Evans was immediately taken to the hospital to be checked out. After being examined and released, she went back to her hotel room that night and spent hours repeatedly filling a trash can with ice water and soaking her injured foot and leg to reduce the swelling and manage the pain. The next morning, incredibly, Evans was back on set performing stunts again, showing the kind of toughness and dedication that made her one of Hollywood's most respected stunt performers. This incident remains one of the closest calls during the entire production of the freeway chase scene. Fact 5. 12 Ducatis were used on set. When you watch Trinity weaving through traffic on that dark green Ducati in The Matrix Reloaded, you're actually seeing the work of not just one motorcycle, but an entire fleet of identical bikes that were used throughout the production. According to legendary stunt rider Debbie Evans, who performed most of the motorcycle work in the film, a total of 12 Ducati motorcycles were used on set during the filming of the highway chase sequence. This surprisingly high number was necessary because of the extreme punishment these bikes had to endure during the weeks of intensive stunt work. The production team needed multiple motorcycles for several practical reasons. First, the stunts were incredibly demanding and included jumps, hard landings, and high-speed maneuvers that the 996 wasn't originally designed to handle. After each major stunt, the bikes had to be thoroughly inspected for stress cracks and potential damage that could compromise safety during the next take. Evans mentioned in interviews that even though the Ducatis held up remarkably well considering what they were put through, having backup bikes was essential to keep filming on schedule without delays for repairs. Interestingly, other sources tell a slightly different story about the exact number of motorcycles used. Some reports claim that only 9 Ducati 996s were specially dressed up with the custom dark green paint job and modifications for the production. One seller of a supposed screen-used bike even claimed that his motorcycle was one of just 9 that appeared in the film. This discrepancy in numbers isn't unusual for big-budget Hollywood productions, where some bikes might have been used for close-up shots, others for dangerous stunts, and still others kept as backups that never actually made it on camera. Whether it was 9 or 12 motorcycles, what's clear is that the production went through multiple identical Ducatis to create that iconic chase scene, with each bike playing a specific role in bringing the high-octane action to life on screen. Fact 6. The green color was for film processing. If you've ever wondered why Trinity's Ducati 996 was painted in that distinctive dark green color instead of the bike's signature Italian racing red, the answer has less to do with style and everything to do with how the Wachowskis filmed the Matrix movies. Every single scene that takes place inside the Matrix, the computer-generated world where most of the action happens, was given a green color overlay during post-production. And this visual effect was the filmmakers' way of letting audiences know they were watching events unfold in the digital simulation rather than the real world. Because of this green filter that would be applied to all the footage later, painting the Ducati in its traditional bright red would have created a visual problem once that green overlay was added in editing. The red paint would have been shifted to a muddy, unclear color that wouldn't photograph well through the green filter, so the production team made the decision to paint all the motorcycles used in the film a deep, dark metallic green from the very beginning. This way, when the green color grading was applied during post-production, the bikes would appear even more striking and would blend seamlessly with the overall visual aesthetic of the Matrix world. The choice wasn't just practical, it ended up becoming iconic, with that specific shade of green now being forever associated with the film. In fact, the color worked so well that when Ducati released their limited edition Matrix Reloaded 998 models in 2004, they used that exact same dark green paint scheme, even though those bikes would never be seen through a green filter. The unusual color choice, born purely out of technical filming requirements, accidentally created one of the most recognizable motorcycles in cinema history. Fact 7. The stunt woman wore vinyl with almost no protection. When Debbie Evans suited up to perform some of the most dangerous motorcycle stunts ever filmed for The Matrix Reloaded, she wasn't wearing the kind of protective gear you'd expect for someone about to ride a Ducati 996 at high speeds through traffic and perform death-defying jumps. Instead, she was squeezed into a tight vinyl suit designed to match Trinity's sleek costume, and underneath that shiny exterior, there was almost nothing between her and serious injury if something went wrong. The vinyl suit itself offered zero protection in a crash, and in fact, if Debbie had gone down while wearing it, the material would have simply shredded apart on impact, leaving her completely exposed to the pavement. To give herself at least some chance of avoiding catastrophic injuries, Debbie wore a layer of spandex underneath the vinyl suit, which would act as an extra layer of skin if the outer costume tore away during a fall. Beyond that, she managed to squeeze in some Fox elbow pads that were form-fitting enough to hide under the tight costume, along with some extremely thin knee and shin guards. She even took small hip pads from motocross pants and stuffed them into the suit wherever she could fit them. But here's the really shocking part. She had to file down the edges of these thin armor pads just to make them flat enough to fit under the skin-tight vinyl without creating visible bumps that would ruin the look on camera. The shiny vinyl boots that completed Trinity's iconic look were just as useless when it came to safety. Like the suit, they were purely for appearance and offered virtually no protection at all. This meant that Debbie was essentially performing high-speed motorcycle stunts, including riding against traffic and jumping the Ducati, while dressed in what amounted to a costume with barely any crash protection. It's a testament to her incredible skill and experience that she made it through the entire production without suffering a catastrophic injury, especially considering she was doing all of this without even wearing a helmet for many of the shots. Fact 8. She used her wig as a helmet. When stunt performer Debbie Evans showed up to film the highway chase sequence in The Matrix Reloaded, the production team had an unusual request that would put her safety at serious risk. They wanted her to perform some of the most dangerous motorcycle stunts ever captured on film without wearing a helmet, which meant her head would be completely exposed while racing at high speeds through traffic, jumping the Ducati 996 and dodging cars on the fake freeway. To make matters even more concerning, the filmmakers initially wanted to cut Evans' hair to match Carrie-Ann Moss's shorter hairstyle for the sake of continuity. But Evans refused this request for a very specific and practical reason. Understanding that she would be performing incredibly dangerous stunts without any proper head protection, Evans insisted on keeping her long hair because it would allow her to wear a wig, and that wig would provide at least some minimal cushioning in case of an accident. While this might sound like a small or insignificant detail, Evans explained in interviews that the layers would actually create a meaningful buffer between her skull and the pavement if something went wrong. With her natural hair underneath, then the cap that holds the wig in place, and finally the wig itself sitting on top. She would have 3 layers of material protecting her head instead of just her bare scalp, which wouldn't offer any protection at all during a crash. This creative safety workaround highlights just how dangerous the filming conditions were for the motorcycle sequences, especially considering that Evans was traveling at speeds of 50 miles per hour or more while weaving through traffic and performing jumps that the Ducati 996 wasn't even designed to handle. The fact that a wig became her primary form of head protection during one of the most expensive and elaborate chase scenes in movie history shows the extreme risks that stunt performers take to create the action sequences that audiences love, often with far less safety equipment than most people would ever imagine. On Fact 9, the directors gifted the stunt woman a Ducati 996. When stunt legend Debbie Evans finished her dangerous work on The Matrix Reloaded, she had no idea the Wachowski directors were about to give her one of the most memorable gifts of her career. After weeks of performing death-defying motorcycle stunts on the Ducati 996 without a helmet, crashing head-on into cars, and narrowly avoiding being crushed by semi-trucks, Evans had developed a deep appreciation for the Italian superbike. During a casual conversation with the directors near the end of production, she mentioned how much she loved the Ducati 996 and asked if they knew where she might be able to get a deal on one since she'd always wanted to own a Ducati. The directors seemed interested in her question and asked what color she would want if she could have one. Evans told them she'd want a red one, but she assumed they were just making conversation and didn't think much more about it. On the very last night of the shoot, someone came riding up to her on a Ducati 996, and sitting right there on the bike was a big red bow. The directors had bought her a brand new red Ducati 996 as a thank you gift for her incredible stunt work on the film. Evans was absolutely thrilled and told interviewers that the Ducati became her favorite motorcycle that she owns, praising how beautiful it looks and how well it handles on the twisty roads near her house. And the gift was particularly meaningful because Evans had been injured during filming when she crashed head-on into a car at about 50 miles per hour. Yet she came back the next day to continue working. The directors were so impressed with her dedication, skill, and the amazing stunts she pulled off that they wanted to show their appreciation in a way that really mattered to her. That red Ducati 996 remains one of Evans' most prized possessions, a permanent reminder of her work on one of cinema's most legendary motorcycle chase scenes. Fact 10. Carrie-Ann Moss hated riding. It while her stunt double. Debbie Evans absolutely loved the Ducati 996 and called it her favorite motorcycle. Carrie Ann Moss had a completely different experience riding the powerful superbike during filming. So in an interview with Entertainment Weekly, Moss revealed that riding the Ducati was actually one of the most stressful parts of making The Matrix Reloaded, which is saying something for a movie filled with dangerous action sequences and complex wire work. The main source of her anxiety wasn't the bike's raw power or its top speed of over 160 miles per hour, but rather the enormous responsibility she felt for keeping her passengers safe. In the film's highway chase scene, Moss had to ride with actor Randall Duke Kim, who played the keymaker, sitting on the back of the motorcycle. She described the experience as carrying a passenger whose life depended on her being impeccable and perfect, explaining that she knew if she allowed her mind even one moment of doubt, she could hurt another human being. This pressure was especially intense because Moss was not an experienced motorcycle rider when she started working on the film. Before climbing onto the Ducati 996 in front of the cameras, she had to practice on several bikes of varying sizes to build up her skills and confidence. Stunt coordinator Debbie Evans worked closely with Moss, teaching her how to handle the powerful superbike until she felt confident enough to ride it with camera vehicles following alongside her, and eventually with an actor on the back. Evans later called this a huge achievement for a beginner on such a fast bike with a very responsive throttle. Adding to the difficulty, Moss performed many of these riding shots without wearing a helmet, which only heightened her awareness of the risks involved. And the combination of riding an unfamiliar high-performance motorcycle, carrying a passenger, and doing it all without proper head protection made the experience exhausting rather than exhilarating for the actress. Fact 11. The bikes weren't built for jumping. When the production team decided to launch Trinity's Ducati 996 off a ramp for one of the highway chase's most dramatic moments, they were asking a road racing superbike to do something it was never designed to handle. The Ducati 996 was engineered for high-speed cornering on smooth pavement, with suspension tuned for grip and handling rather than absorbing the brutal impact of landing a motorcycle jump. Despite this, stunt coordinator Debbie Evans and her team performed what she described as an ambitious double jump with a passenger on the back. I'm repeating the stunt 6 or 7 times during filming. Each landing was incredibly harsh on the bike's frame and suspension, especially considering these motorcycles weren't built with the reinforced structure or long travel suspension that motocross bikes have for exactly this kind of punishment. After every jump, the production crew meticulously inspected each Ducati for stress cracks in the frame, checking to make sure the repeated abuse hadn't compromised the bike's structural integrity. The fact that 12 Ducati motorcycles were available on set became crucial, as the jumps and hard landings could have easily damaged or destroyed bikes that weren't designed for aerial stunts. What made these jumps even more challenging was that Debbie Evans had a passenger riding on the back during the stunt. She specifically chose David Barrett, a professional motocross racer who also worked as a stuntman because he understood what she called air sense, the instinctive knowledge of how to position your body weight during flight and landing. Evans explained that the key to surviving the brutal landings wasn't just sitting on the seat and absorbing the shock. Instead, both rider and passenger stood up on the foot pegs as they hit the ground, using their legs and the bike's suspension together to absorb the impact before settling back down onto the seat. This technique, borrowed from motocross riding, was the only way to keep from being slammed hard onto the bike with each landing, protecting both the riders and preventing additional stress on the already overtaxed motorcycle. Fact 12. Keanu Reeves owns one. While Keanu Reeves played Neo in The Matrix Reloaded, he never actually got to ride the Ducati 996 during filming since it was Trinity's bike in the movie, but that didn't stop him from adding one to his personal motorcycle collection. Reeves owns a 2004 Ducati 998 Matrix Reloaded Edition, one of the ultra-rare commemorative bikes that Ducati released to capitalize on the film's popularity. The bike features the same distinctive Matrix green paint that made the motorcycle so recognizable on screen, along with special Matrix Reloaded graphics and decals. In interviews, Reeves has called it a spectacular bike and a beautiful motorcycle, clearly holding it in high regard among his collection of two-wheelers. What makes this ownership particularly interesting is that Reeves keeps the bike as more than just a piece of movie memorabilia. He's mentioned wanting to take the one-of-a-kind Ducati out on racetracks someday, as he feels the bike's extreme popularity among Matrix fans makes it worth showing off in its full glory. For someone who co-founded his own custom motorcycle company called Arch Motorcycle and has owned everything from vintage Norton Commandos to Kawasaki Ninjas, having this specific Ducati in his garage represents a tangible connection to one of his most iconic film franchises. The bike serves as a reminder of his time working on the Matrix series, even though he personally never swung a leg over it during the actual production. The irony isn't lost that Trinity's bike became Neo's bike in real life. While Carrie Ann Moss rode the 996 on screen and found the experience stressful and terrifying, but Reeves genuinely appreciates the machine for what it is, a high-performance Italian superbike that happens to wear one of cinema's most famous paint jobs. He's admitted that when he doesn't ride motorcycles regularly, he goes through withdrawal, and it's not good for his health, so having the Matrix Edition 998 available gives him both a functional ride and a piece of film history rolled into one incredibly rare package. Fact 13. 4 seconds from being crushed. One of the most terrifying moments during the filming of The Matrix Reloaded's freeway chase didn't even make it into the final cut, but it revealed just how close stunt rider Debbie Evans came to a potentially fatal accident. But in the scene where an agent takes over a massive 18-wheeler truck and attempts to crush Trinity and the keymaker against the concrete retaining wall on the highway shoulder, the margin for error was impossibly thin. During the initial practice runs, Evans made a critical discovery that changed how the entire stunt would be performed. When she was positioned riding behind the truck instead of alongside it, she timed exactly how long it would take before she would be completely trapped if the truck suddenly cut across her path. The answer was chilling: just 4 seconds. That meant if she had been riding alongside the truck as originally planned, she would have had only 4 seconds to react and escape before being crushed between the massive vehicle and the unforgiving concrete barrier. This close call got Evans's attention immediately, and she later described it as one of the sequences she did not care for during the entire production. Unlike stunts performed inside a car where metal surrounds you and provides some level of protection, motorcycle stunts leave riders completely exposed and vulnerable. The realization that she had such a narrow window of survival made this particular stunt especially challenging and dangerous. Evans was relieved when that sequence was finally completed and they could move on to other parts of the chase. The production team ultimately adjusted their approach based on this discovery, but the fact remains that the stunt was designed so precisely that the difference between a successful take and a catastrophic accident was measured in mere seconds. For a motorcycle traveling at high speed with a passenger on the back, 4 seconds is barely enough time to process what's happening, let alone execute an evasive maneuver that could save 2 lives. Fact 14. Over 300 GM cars were destroyed. When General Motors signed on to support the Matrix Reloaded's legendary freeway chase scene, they didn't just hand over a few cars for product placement, they donated more than 300 vehicles, knowing full well that most of them would be completely destroyed. This wasn't a carefully controlled operation where cars got minor cosmetic damage and lived to film another day. These vehicles were launched into the air, rolled over multiple times, flipped onto their roofs, crushed by tractor trailers, and smashed into walls and barriers in spectacular fashion. And the vast majority of this destruction happened through real practical effects rather than computer-generated imagery. The donation made sense from General Motors' perspective, since the main hero vehicles in the chase were Cadillacs, including the sleek Cadillac CTS that Trinity drove and the Cadillac Escalade EXT used by the twins. Having their luxury brand featured so prominently in one of the most anticipated action sequences of 2003 was worth sacrificing hundreds of older models from their various divisions. What viewers saw on screen when cars went flying through the air or tumbling across multiple lanes of traffic wasn't green screen trickery or miniature models. Those were actual full-sized vehicles being destroyed by professional stunt drivers on that custom-built freeway loop. The Wachowskis' commitment to practical effects meant that stunt coordinators had to carefully plan which vehicles would be used for which crashes, since once a car was destroyed, it couldn't be used again. Some vehicles were rigged with special equipment for specific stunts like flips or rollovers, while others were simply driven at high speeds into barriers or other cars to create the chaos of the wrong-way chase sequence. The sheer scale of automotive destruction required meticulous planning and execution over those 7 weeks of filming, with new cars continuously being positioned and prepared for their moment of spectacular demolition, creating one of the most expensive and ambitious practical effect chase scenes in cinema history. Fact 15. The Freeway took 7 weeks to film The Matrix. Reloaded's legendary highway chase scene required an absolutely massive production effort that stretched across 7 full weeks of continuous filming, all taking place on that custom-built freeway loop at the decommissioned Naval Air Station Alameda in California. To put this in perspective, 7 weeks represents nearly 2 months of dedicated work on just one sequence, which shows just how committed the Wachowskis were to capturing every dangerous stunt, every motorcycle maneuver, and every car crash exactly the way they envisioned it. The production crew worked day after day on that specially constructed 1.25 mile loop, coordinating hundreds of vehicles, stunt performers, and camera operators to create what would become one of the most technically impressive action sequences in modern cinema. The sheer scale of the operation meant that the fake freeway became a temporary city unto itself, with the 19-foot plywood and concrete walls serving as boundaries for this controlled chaos where General Motors vehicles were systematically destroyed and Ducati motorcycles performed stunts they were never designed to handle. Once those 7 intensive weeks of filming wrapped up and the production moved on to Sydney, Australia for the remaining 270 days of shooting, the expensive freeway set was completely torn down and demolished. However, the construction left a permanent mark on the landscape that remains visible to this day. If you look at aerial photography of the former Naval Air Station Alameda, you can still clearly see the outline of the freeway loop traced across the old runways, a ghostly reminder of where Hollywood history was made. The route shows up as distinct markings on the concrete, visible from above even years after the set was dismantled. This same location, interestingly enough, later became famous as the filming site for many of the Mythbusters television show's more destructive experiments, with the crew referring to it simply as the Alameda Runway because of the extensive safety zone the abandoned base provides.